you very much for the invitation. I come from Latin America, although I work for a private company. I will try to discuss with you the general approach that public administrations in our region are taking. I would have to agree first with Representative Pilar del Castillo and with Tony de Coster around the need to deepen cooperation between Europe and other parts of the world, and that's the case of Latin America, obviously. We are, as a private company, pretty much satisfied with the ongoing ICT dialogues already set up with Brazil, with Mexico, and the one that is also being organized with Argentina. We believe these dialogues have proven quite successful in the past. They have strongly influenced the Latin American agenda on ICT policy and obviously have improved conditions for European investment in the region, and that's something we pretty much like. We also agree with the fact that digital policies are related with global debates, and those global debates need obviously joint approaches, and that's the case in discussions undergoing in the World Trade Organization, in the OECD, at the ISG, Internet Governance Forums, and the like. And we would love to see coordinated approaches from Europe and Latin America in those discussions. What is LATAM? What is exactly digital LATAM? Let me convey to you some figures. We're speaking about the region of 600 million people. Of those, 300 million people, more or less, are already connected to the internet. So we have 50% of our population using the internet. What is the problem? The problem is that we have 300 million people that are not connected to the internet, that are not taking advantage of this platform. Out of these 300 million people, 200 live in areas where data connectivity is already available. That means that we have a demand-side problem there. I mean, there are lots of explanations here, but there are problems on the contents, obviously. Some of these people believe internet is not relevant for their life. There are problems of literacy. There are problems of the ability to pay for the services and the like. So this is one part of the problem. The other part of the problem is that out of these 600 million people, 100 million live in areas where data connectivity is not offered. So we have a problem to connect the unconnected in Latin America, and this is a very specific problem in our region. But that's not the only problem. The thing is that, as I would discuss with you, most of Latin American digital agendas put their focus only in connectivity. I mean, they are dealing with the problem of 100 million people, which is important, but sometimes they are forgetting the problem of the 200 million people that live in areas where data connectivity is already available, but are not using internet. With regards to digital agendas, I mean, Latin America is a difficult construction to understand. It's a very heterogeneous region without supranational authorities. So that actually means that when you speak about Latin America, you're speaking about different realities. And it is very difficult in a 7-minute speech to try to convey all of this complexity. So let me try to just pass on some very simple messages. First, there are digital agendas all over the place. I mean, in Latin America, you would see regional agendas. There is a effort being coordinated by the Economic Commission on Latin America and the Caribbean, which is a United Nations institution that tries to coordinate policies. So far, 6 ministerial summits have been organized throughout a period of 15 years, and they have produced nothing. So what we have is lots of papers with low level of delivery. Then you would see national agendas. And in this front, I am more than optimistic. I mean, there are some countries that are on top, leading Latin American reality. And let me try to point out your attention to the Colombian case. In Colombia, under President Santos, two quite relevant decisions were taken. The first one was to create an ICT minister, and this was a substantial change because previously the minister only dealt with telecom infrastructure. And this general vision, as Tony has pointed out, that the problem is multi-sided, so to say, and that you need to have a comprehensive agenda that deals not only with infrastructure but with supply side and demand side problems is very relevant. And the first step to do this seriously is to put someone in charge. Imagine this. This is a substantial change in a region where most of the ministers are still ministers of transportation and telecommunications, where most of the time of the ministry is developed or devoted to transportation and public investments on roads. So this is one problem. The second thing Colombia did was to approve a comprehensive agenda. This is sort of like the European example, which is named Vive Digital. And Vive Digital has been in place for 8 years. Our view on this is that, although some critiques could be made, the best country on the digital agenda policy is Colombia, but some others are catching up. 3 years ago, the government of President Bachelet in Chile already approved the comprehensive agenda. That's going on well. The thing in Chile is that they still don't have a minister dealing only with digital policy, which is something we strongly support. In Mexico, there is an office of digital strategy reporting directly to the president in Casa de los Pinos, and this is something that has helped a lot. So at the national level, some countries are outperforming their peers, and there seems to be the biggest progress in Colombia, and Mexico, and Chile. Then there are some sub-regional instances that need to be carefully analyzed, and we believe that what is happening at the Pacific Alliance is of quite relevance for Europe, because the Pacific Alliance is a alliance comprised by 4 countries in Latin America: Mexico, Colombia, Peru, and Chile. Those countries are the countries that are normally preferred by investors in Latin America. They rank normally on top of investing preferences, so to say. They have macroeconomic policies that are consistent with the promotion of competition in open markets. So what they are doing now is discussing their digital agenda for the bloc with a very pragmatic approach. This is supposed to be discussed in the Puerto Vallarta summit by the end of July. That's part of the agenda. I mean, the agenda comprises lots of issues, but there is a slot for digital policies. So digital policies are coming to the top of the Pacific Alliance approach, and that's a very important thing. So in general terms, what's happening in Latin America? I would try to say that, there's sort of a competitive approach, because although there are some regional coordinations that are not working out, at the same time countries, at least some of them, are doing things and moving as fast as possible. And this competition among countries have proven in the past in Latin America that may conduct to some regional standards. That has been the case in the telecom sector. In Latin America, nobody has been seeking for a telco single market, but we already created sort of one because we have truly regional operators, something Europe lacks these days. So it's sort of like the force of the competition is producing that. So let me end up trying to convey how we, as a private company, are trying to support digital agendas and how we see the basic pillars here. We believe there are at least 3 pillars that need to be taken into account in the region. One pillar is dealing with enablers. I mean, which are the basic enablers of the digital transformation? It is easy to see this. One is human skills. I mean, you need to work on human capital, and most of the digital agendas in Latin America are lacking that part of the equation. Second, infrastructure. The bad side of the equation is that 100 million people live in areas where data connectivity is not being offered. The brighter side of this equation is that out of these 100 million, 40 million live in 2G voice-only areas of coverage. So even though you don't have data infrastructure, you have some infrastructure that could be upgraded in order to provide data services. And this is something we are currently analyzing in Telefonica. But on top of these two enablers, human capital and infrastructure, you need to consider the institutional enabler. So one thing we strongly believe the European Union could help us in Latin America is trying to convey the message, the strong message that unless you have one person responsible of digital policies in the cabinet of each government, you are not doing much. Second, the second pillar here is around accelerators. In fact, big corporations as Telefonica have already realized both the potential and the risks of digital transformation. If we do not transform ourselves, we may lag behind and lose ground in our region. So we are heavily investing in digital transformation. But that's not the case of the government, in particular public administrations, and small enterprises. So we need to put up some public money there, basically to induce governments and small companies to transform themselves. The third pillar is a pillar that has been normally overseen in our region, that deals with elements of sustainability. I mean, the whole internet system, the whole digital economy is based upon trust, confidence, and the protection of the citizens in our countries. And the problem is that once, the digital economy has been created, frontiers are a issue of the past, and digital sovereignty is at stake. So problems like taxation, like privacy, like security, like cybersecurity are no more national problems. And we need to try to cooperate on that arena. Very recently there have been at least 2 European initiatives that have had global influence. One is the GDPR on privacy. The second is the digital taxation initiative that's currently being discussed. Those two approaches are of utmost interest for Latin America, so we very much would like to see some dialogues around those. Lastly, let me try to do some marketing. 2 weeks ago, we launched a document that's already available in our website, which is named Manifesto for a New Digital Deal. This document engraves the convictions, the faith of Telefonica on how we need to rethink the public policies for the digital economy. Most of the things I have already conveyed to you today are in that document. So it'd be good for you and for us if we could discuss on such document. So that is pretty much it. Thank you very much.